the stream should be live. So, hello everyone, and welcome to Talking About Survivor. I'm Christiana Ellis,
And I'm Mike Mateen.
and we are talking about episode 6 of Survivor Winners at War. Hey, remember when all we had to worry about was reality TV?
I was about
I
to make a reality TV joke, but it's probably not appropriate for here.
okay. Well, I mean, I don't know that we have uh, we have rigorous broadcast standards that we're having to follow here or something or anything.
No, I was just going to call into this proves why reality TV should kind of stay as reality TV and maybe
Yeah.
not
Well.
be. We shouldn't be electing, although Jeff Probst would probably do a better job. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Um.
But
Anyway.
yeah, it's been a different couple of weeks. This
Yeah.
is now how you and I talk. Is now how everybody is having to speak to each other.
Social distancing. But yeah, I mean,
Ahead of
in
the
some
curve.
ways, yeah, it's interesting actually just to think about how, like, obviously there are a lot of things to really be concerned about, and we don't want to make light of those things. But there are also some interesting questions about how certain like technologies might evolve to try to grapple with the need for so many more people to do stuff like this, like more and more people having to try to use these programs. I mean, you watch CNN right now and you constantly have people broadcasting in from their home and having their cell phones ring and stuff like that while they're trying to talk about the news, and it just keeps happening, and you sort of feel like, aren't those supposed to be the professionals who know how to do this stuff? Although I have to say, if I was being interviewed live on CNN, I bet you people would try to text me.
Oh yeah, and then
Because so I feel like I get it, but that means it's incumbent on the person doing it to proactively silence their cell phone. Anyway.
yeah. So well, just as a kind of quick aside of that, we had to make a rule. How we got tired of having to keep telling everybody to go on mute because anytime you like rustle around, especially on some of them, there's the feature where it moves whoever's talking to like the main screen,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody else is up on the top or the side or whatever. And so every time someone like rustles their thing, like even if someone else is actually being presenting and talking, like they keep moving into the front of everyone's.
Yeah, yeah.
So we get sick of just saying you be on mute. I mean, we still encourage people to be on mute, especially if they're going to have another conversation or do something. But we had to teach everybody to set the standard setting to what's called like gallery mode, where it never, like, it just makes everybody the same size, and whoever's speaking just lights up.
Right.
But yeah, it's just like silly things like, God, can you not just sit in your house and be quiet, like while you're not the one talking? Like, can't you just put it on mute? Like, why is that so hard? Like,
Yeah, so I think on the software we're using for meetings at my workplace, we are uh, you can set yourself to mute, but it has what's known as push to talk, which just means that it's muted. But then when you want to say something, you just hold down the space bar, and it unmutes you temporarily, only while you're holding down the space bar. And then you let go of the space bar, you're muted again.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, makes it a lot simpler. But
Yep.
despite it being all anyone wants to talk about, we have something else to talk about, and that is episode 6 of Survivor Winners at War. So, highlights.
I mean, getting Parvati and Sandra out right after Rob is, I mean, pretty much a highlight.
This
I
was
mean,
a big episode. Lots of stuff.
yeah, like I couldn't believe that both tribes got it together and got off like those, again, those perceived like big threats.
Mm-hmm.
You know, working independently and not even realizing like that they had both done that.
Right.
Um, so a lot of cool strategy. I think the highlight of seeing people now starting to, without even really knowing what the fire tokens can buy, they're starting to like use them in different ways
Hmm.
because they know that we wouldn't. They know enough to know they wouldn't inject it into the game if it wasn't gonna be important at some point.
Or or at the very least, it being in the game and people interested in using them is in some ways what makes them important.
Right.
I mean, we don't know how it's going to actually play out, but I was,
Yeah, but I
we
think
saw.
even then, like I think someone like Sandra, like and what ended up being like her mistake, I think she's seeing that as like, oh well, I don't know what these are going to be used for yet, but if I see an opportunity, like why not try to get some? You know?
Yeah. Well, I think what's kind of fascinating about Sandra in this episode is that she deviated from her usual plan. She got greedy, and instead of just making sure it was not her, she just kind of said, "Well, I already am pretty sure it's not going to be me, so now I'm going to do this extra thing where the whole plan is contingent on this idea that I'm helping you and giving you the ability to vote out whoever you want." And I guess that could be me, but you wouldn't do that, right? And I think she just, like she obviously didn't think Denise was going to do that, but
Yeah, I
she
think she
was
severely
mistaken.
underestimated her, and
Yeah.
when while getting greedy,
And
I think, yeah.
how cool for Denise making the power move there, like it's
Well, and even the foresight to negotiate the purchase of the idol from two
yeah.
fire tokens to one now, one later,
Uh-huh.
knowing that she was going to get rid of her later, Sandra not even thinking like, like that. Why would she want to wait till after? And so to have that be totally innocent and
Mhm.
so not even cost herself for both of her fire tokens, you
Yeah.
know. Um,
Mhm.
so
That
yeah, I mean,
was
I think that was an incredible highlight.
very cool move from Denise.
Yeah,
Now, obviously, playing the second idol for Jeremy turned out to be unnecessary, but at the same time, that doesn't necessarily, it's not the same thing as saying it was a bad decision, right? Like, you could call it a mistake in the sense that it turned out it wasn't necessary, but it wasn't a bad decision because what she was going for is just making sure that
right.
like if they were all planning to vote for Denise but include one vote for Jeremy as a backup, she didn't want there to be a tie and cause problems.
Right. And she further like deepens that relationship with Jeremy, who now essentially owes her one, for whatever, soft credit that'll be worth.
Frankly, it's
Just
a
in
little weird.
case.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't mean to cut you off. I was just but I was just thinking they probably should have put in a vote for Jeremy, right? I mean, it
Well,
was
yeah, because she
three
had an
against
idol
two.
separate. Yeah.
Yeah, and so why like it was three against two, and like, well, so hang on. I guess if they split their three, and Denise and Jeremy voted together, it could be a tie. So that I guess they
Oh
didn't
yeah, no, you're
actually
right.
have the.
Yep, yep.
Yeah,
So
so I was thinking for a second they maybe had the numbers to do that, but maybe not. Only if they were sure that they had Denise and Jeremy voting against each other and not together, right?
right.
If they were sure that was happening, they might do it, but otherwise, you know, they didn't necessarily have the numbers for that. So they were trying to be confident. But I guess, that's where Denise was saying she doesn't know which they might be doing, right? It's
Right.
possible. So it's possible they might still be putting a vote on Jeremy, and she doesn't want to end up in a tie with him after having just played, like that. That's complicated, right? Well, I mean, I guess if, well, no, never mind. So it wouldn't be a tie with him. It would be a tie
Yeah.
between
Right. She was
whoever
just protecting
Sandra
him in
and
case he
Jeremy,
was
right?
being lied. Yeah.
Right. But so being sure that she wants to keep Jeremy in the game, she took the step needed to be certain that would happen. And so
Yeah.
I,
And I think it further strengthens the move, down the line. Like if she's making a case at tribal council,
mm-hmm,
like, hey, not only did I orchestrate, this to get Sandra out, but I also had another idol. that you guys didn't even know about to make sure that me and my ally were both safe.
Hmm.
Like that's how well I had played that at that point. And nobody's going to remember, well, you didn't ultimately need that for your ally. Like they'll remember Denise ended up with 2 idols because Sandra got greedy and Denise, took advantage of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It was just very cool. I think it might be my favorite single move in the season so far.
yeah,
Just
I
the
I would think so too. Yeah.
you know.
So
But so we
yeah.
also let's talk about some of the other uses of fire tokens where those came up because obviously that was one. Another was Tyson actually spending one on some peanut butter out on Edge of Extinction, which we could debate whether that's better or worse than trying to save them for a challenge advantage. But his thinking is keeps him sane by having something to like look forward to, gives him some extra calories to keep him strong. Like there's logic there.
Hmm.
Yeah, and especially just the morale aspect of it, you know, because
Well,
he
yeah,
not
and
only
for him, like it works with his personality too.
yeah,
Like he's going to be better equipped to play the game better when he has something like that where he knows he can sneak off and eat peanut butter. Like
yeah.
that's just like a thing. Like
Didn't he say it's like I get to know I'm doing something devious and hilarious or something like
yeah,
that?
exactly. So like that itself is like motivation for him.
Mm-hmm.
Which ultimately is probably worth it. Buying an advantage later on.
Yeah.
I think it's a fair trade if you're going to use it for all of those things. Like if you just got it and then just ate all of it right away, and that I mean that would be stupid. But the fact that, like you said, he's using it as this kind of mental boost as well as a physical boost,
Mm-hmm.
and getting a kick out of it and having something like to look forward to. I mean, all those things. I at first because we're trying to look at it from you know this very transactional thing is like, well, why would you? That seems like a waste of those when there are clearly more important things you could be buying. But it, then just having kind of watching him like enjoy himself so much, it's like, well, there's some value in that. Just like we want sometimes. Like I want to spend my money on something that I don't really need because I like it and it makes me happy, and that ends up being a better use of the money than just only using it for utilitarian purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, let them do it,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and he even
and that's why
calls
they're
out.
there.
Yeah.
That's what.
Well, and he calls out too that peanut butter in particular, like if you had to have like a survival food, peanut butter's a pretty good one.
Hmm.
It's got all the things you want: protein and fat and calories, right? It's just like no. Anyway,
It tastes good,
yeah. Well,
and
and
it keeps
then
for a long time with no refrigeration.
hmm. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And then he'll also have a jar. Even once he finishes it, you can do something with that. I don't know. Hide things in it, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, I'm literally like imagining Legend of Zelda and how the empty bottles are like, you. Those are one of the best treasures. Like, oh yeah, empty bottles because you can put a fairy in there and it saves you if you run out of hearts. Anyway,
You won't be able to do that
probably not, unless
though.
there's fairies on the island. We don't know. But we also had the fire tokens come up with Wendell, where I I don't think we can say that he played exceptionally well this episode, but I do kind of admire him realizing that his attempt at a deal is kind of blowing up in his face and then doubling down on it instead of trying to backpedal.
Yeah,
I kind of liked that.
when she was like, well, I mean, he basically is offering to sell me his boat, and Crow's like, well, does that still stand? He kind of sits there for a second and goes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just,
Well, I think what
everybody
was
looks at him like, what? Wait, what?
well, because his tribal council evolved, right? Because he started out coming out saying, "It's like I'll stab anyone in the back, I'll stab him in the front," and then everybody starts talking about like, "Well, I don't know, I don't think we like that. That's not really how we want to play, and that doesn't. You don't have to play like that." And I don't know. I'm not sure Wendell's a really nice guy if he's going to say things like that. And they're all just, it's all just blah 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 blah. Probst chatter, like it's please, they're saying all the normal things, right? Because everybody knows that you have to sort of be prepared to betray people, and he just said it out loud, and so they're trying to use that against him. But you can see him start to process how, like, they're talking about me in the wrong way right now. This doesn't seem good. They're, instead of kind of saying, Wendell's right. You always have to be worried, about something like that. People have, everyone's playing their own game. Like he thought maybe people were going to be saying that, but then for them to say, no, that's not really how I want to play, and he's starting to look around like, wait a minute, this is turned somehow. But I just I loved it. And then poor Yule sitting there. I feel like I'm watching my parents bicker.
Yeah, that was a funny, thing. So
But yeah, and all of that leading though to Parvati going home. Like I mean, I mean, in some ways, Parvati wasn't a surprise to go. Like early in the episode, the whole issue was the numbers are against Parvati and Michelle. And Michelle knows that Parvati is the bigger target and would like to save her, but isn't sure she can, right? I mean, she was, Parvati was the one with the crosshairs on her from the beginning of the episode. So it's not a shock.
right.
But for the way it all developed to lead to Wendell with a little bit of a, shoot, I felt like I had the perfect turn of phrase there, and it just a little bit like he had a little bit of a heel turn sort of moment. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, he definitely goes on the in the what could be improved, what
yeah, yeah,
area.
yeah. So definitely, well, because early on, Michelle is trying to say like, well, what can be done? Maybe I can work with Wendell. But like the deal that she kind of approaches him with, I said in my notes at the time, like, well, what does he gain from this deal? He's sure that Parvati should go because she's the biggest target, and you are offering him nothing in exchange for voting out someone else, one of his allies. I mean, I guess she's trying anything she can think of, but I just felt like, it's one thing for her to say later, why is it that I'm always the one giving and he's always the one taking when I got burned in the relationship? And I'm like, well, yeah, but I mean, the deal you proposed doesn't get him anything.
Right.
So I'm not at all surprised that he wouldn't take that deal. It seems like he probably shouldn't.
No, I
Um,
mean, I think that ultimately they did the right thing. By getting Parvati out. I mean,
yeah.
she
Well,
is difficult to get out. Obviously, she's
Well, it took a few weeks, but what we were saying in those weeks is that they really the people, the big names really ought to be targeted, and in the last couple of episodes, they've really started doing that. Get out Rob, you get out Sandra, you get out Parvati, like those, yeah.
well, yeah, and that's I think if Adam makes it to the final tribal council, like I think that that's got to be a huge part of his argument. Is not only did he vote out Rob, but he started to make it okay
Hmm.
because I think that's part of it. Like I don't necessarily know that we get the same result if Rob doesn't go home last time. Well, obviously, partly
Yeah,
because Rob would still, game theory, Rob would still be there, so he would
hmm,
be maneuvering. But
yeah, kind of breaks the seal, so
like
to
that,
speak.
right? Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. And then so following up with that whole deal, it maybe that conversation is still what got Wendell thinking about the fire tokens, and kind of like, I wonder if there is actually something that could happen here. Like, so do you like? I feel like his offer was to Parvati was genuine, but maybe it was the conversation with Michelle that just really got him thinking like, what would it take? Well, I need to be able to get something from it. And Michelle doesn't have anything to give me, but maybe Parvati does. So, like, we don't really know what these fire tokens do, but maybe they're worth something. And, if we,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I we're right. We don't know if it was genuine, if he would have actually done something had she gone over to it. I liked her approach and her strategy to respond to this, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to try to, spend the fire tokens and hope that Wendell does what he said,
Yeah.
to try to turn that sale of a vote into something as a target on Wendell. I
Yes.
think that
Yes.
was the more appropriate way to do it. It didn't ultimately work, but that doesn't mean it wasn't the better,
Yeah.
strategy.
I honestly, I think it's a strategy that would have worked if Parvati wasn't such a big target enough so that everyone kind of knew they needed to get rid of her. But like it was a good idea because to some extent she had to be also thinking like he and I were at loggerheads for so long. Why do I believe this now and not that he is just trying to trick me into saying someone's name so that he can use that as a convincing argument to have them not join me or something, right? Like why are you offering that?
Right.
But yeah, so that was all pretty good. Let's see what other highlights we had. It was a good challenge. I like the I like pushing the rice bags through the little hole. I just feel like that's a cool obstacle that I like watching.
Yeah, because it's just because it's different, because
Mm-hmm.
the way that it's just fun. I agree.
Yeah.
Um,
And
I thought another highlight was Tony just for whatever reason these spy shacks. Like, what are you doing? Like that was like not even an appropriate time to like you should probably be in the conversation with your own allies as opposed to spying on your own allies.
mm-hmm.
He's
Yeah.
just so goofy. Like,
Well, I think Tony is certainly one of those players who has a little bit of a percentage of his brain focused on what will make good TV. You know what I mean? And that's not a criticism even, really. Just depends on what people are thinking about. But, he's thinking about like, well, I did this once before and people thought it was cool and funny and people will do this before the Spy Shack and so I'll do it again and I'll get some good intel, but you're right that it basically what it did is not only did people say, is he doing one of those spy things? He did it at the water last time, so don't talk over there. And also, it meant he was absent from all the strategy conversations when people are saying, "Where's Tony? We need to talk about what's happening."
yes. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Like he plays the game where it would, yeah, of course he would like to win again, and he's not trying not to win, but
Mm-hmm.
he's also just as important is to him is to have fun and enjoy himself. Like,
Yeah.
he just,
Mm-hmm.
so
All right. The last highlight that I had was Jeremy's analogy of the duck on water, complete with looks serene up top, but underneath is.
yes, yeah, the fact that he like actually like mimed out like what that
Yeah.
analogy means, like when
Mm-hmm. That was pretty
at
good.
least I figured everybody was familiar with that, but
Yeah.
yeah, he made sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk favorite moments.
My favorite moment was Denise pulling the trigger on that. I
Yeah,
mean,
for sure. Did you
just
freeze?
good, and
Oh yeah, you
just
froze up a little bit. Sorry.
yeah, just so good, and not and just again proving that none of these people should be underestimated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's funny how often we're ending up agreeing on the favorite moments, but yeah, you and I have known each other a long time, and we do all these shows because we have similar taste in a lot of things.
Yep.
But yes, that was absolutely my favorite moment too, and I'm going to go ahead and say that was also my biggest surprise because I wasn't sure Denise did have it in her. In that moment where Sandra made that offer, I immediately was thinking like, you Sandra, you've just given Denise the ability to to vote you out. Did you mean to do that? But at the same time, I was thinking, Denise wasn't necessarily a super bold player. We don't think of her that way necessarily. But is she going to say that needs to make a move, or would she rather have Sandra as an ally moving forward? I kind of wasn't sure she would do it, but
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I'm still gonna couple that both the fact that both tribes were able to pick the biggest threat and execute it in totally different ways
mm-hmm.
um, was the biggest surprise to me. Like I just did not think that we would enter this episode and leave with Rob, Sandra, and Parvati all gone. You know,
Well, and
obviously
that's
Rob was already gone before this, but like I just to know that none of them are available yet.
mm-hmm. Well, that's on top of what we knew last time, which was that like Adam was in real trouble because of how like despite getting out Rob, he was still kind of in a tough position at that point.
Right.
Even and he said he was cornered, and we know that he doesn't even know all of the reasons he's in a bad position. But then that tribe wins the challenge with Adam running the maze. So it kind of just worked out like for everybody there. Well, I mean, I guess not for everybody, but I mean for Adam and then for us, the viewers, to get to watch the other two tribes have to do tribal council.
Yep.
That's what I meant by working out for everybody. Obviously, it didn't actually work out for everybody. But yeah, so I think Denise is clearly the MVP. I mean, it's hard to really argue for anyone else in this episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's talk about what went wrong. You mentioned Wendell earlier. So like in your feeling about this, like first of all, he's not the voted out player. Usually we say what went wrong for the voted out player. But you mentioned Wendell earlier, so let's talk a little bit about that. What went wrong?
He, to your point, like he approached Parvati from a position of, like you said, they've been at loggerheads the whole time. Like
Mm-hmm.
he came with almost too strong of an offer for her that actually gave her. He underestimated the fact that like she thinks like Rob and that they will exploit if they're the one that's kind of in down, they will
Mm-hmm.
exploit the conversation you have with them to the rest of the tribe. And Rob has done that a couple of times. She was part of that. She knows how to do that. She was very very good at doing that a lot on her season because she is so social.
Mm-hmm.
She's able to get a lot of information out of people and get them to like be friendly with her and then go and turn that on them. So he just severely underestimated that, and to think that like I don't know what he thought his end game was, like whether he thought he would actually get those fire tokens and then vote with her and they would be like allies now, or if he would thought he could just trick her and get the fire tokens. Like it's just the end game didn't feel complete.
Yeah,
Especially when the fact that he like doubled down on it when he got called out.
well, I think he only did that because he was starting to suspect that people might be voting for him, and he was trying to just, you know, say, well, if people are maybe considering turning, then I need to just like mix it up. Maybe if his concern was, um, if people are thinking they're maybe going to get out me, maybe what if I can actually get back and voting with Parvati and just change things, toss the checkerboard.
Right.
But
Yeah, that's not going to work well for him. So that's why I said that's what went wrong. It's like he made a poorly thought out play. It blew up in his face.
mm-hmm.
He is only the one not voted out because Parvati is such a strong name that they were smart enough to say, this is our opportunity. Like, don't let this, get away from us. We can deal with Wendell later.
Mm-hmm.
He, but he's not in a strong position. I mean, same to like we talked about with Adam, like really needing that win. mean, Wendell's going to be in a tough spot after this. I mean,
Hmm.
he still has his allies, but they are not going to trust him.
Yeah.
And he may make it as far as like a swap, but he's not going to be, or a merge, but he's
Hmm.
going to be, yeah, they're going to always have their eye on him, at this point. So that's where I say what went wrong because it's hard. Like you look at Parvati and you say, well, what went wrong for her? Like I think that she, based on the cards she was given, unless
Hmm.
for some reason like we just don't realize it, and Wendell had this amazing plan once he got her to,
Yeah.
and she just forgave. Looking at the way that we're looking at it, I don't think that that's realistic. I think what she did was right. There wasn't really much more she could have done.
Yeah, I mean, what she did wrong, what went wrong was really she just ended up on the bad side of the numbers while having a big target on her back. I mean,
Right, and
there's,
in a double elimination, so two teams are, two tribes lose. There's only
yeah,
one winner, so yeah, you end up more of an odds of being on a group that's getting voted out. Um, we already talked about what went wrong for Sandra is that she went away from her entire strategy, which is anyone but me. She got greedy and
underestimated Denise.
yep, and underestimated somebody, which and I think that I even had in my notes like that she was talking about like how much she was underestimating. She didn't even call it underestimating. She was like she was meant to talking about how, like her, Rob, Parvati, Kelly were like the big threats, and then
Hmm.
there were these others which were like almost like basically like diminished, putting them on tiers the way that we all do as viewers. I mean,
Hmm.
she's not wrong, but at the same time, every one of them has won this game.
Right.
And whether or not, there's some that we say, okay, well, maybe in this season we thought maybe someone else should have won in that final tribal. Like even barring all that, they all got themselves in that position, you
Hmm.
know. So even if they wouldn't can't win this season in a final tribal because maybe they won't have the same situation they did when they won, they're still capable of getting there. And maybe you shouldn't underestimate that.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it was just one of those things where, here's Sandra thinking, well, Denise is definitely going home without my help, is what she thinks, because she doesn't know about Denise having an idol already. So here she's thinking, I'm throwing a life preserver to her. Surely she would, just be, happy enough to be saved that she wouldn't try to stab me in the back about it. But I mean, I wonder. It is an interesting question, though. Just if Denise didn't have a second idol, didn't have an idol already, um, does she still make the same move? I kind of feel like she would, but would have been a tougher call probably.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, she had both idols and could
Yeah,
go into it with confidence. Yeah.
indeed. All right, so uh, that's this week of talking about Survivor. So our plan is to be back next week to talk about episode 7. So uh, maybe before we just sign off, we could just remind everybody that I hope everyone's doing well with everything going on right now. But if you are, that's great. But a lot of people probably aren't. So keep an eye out for how you can help people who are going to be maybe having a harder time with all this.
Absolutely.
All right, so we'll leave it there for this week, and we'll be back next week. So try to survive until then.
It still feels so
I
awkward right
know,
now.
right? Eh.